Okay. Hello. Jesus. All right, I'm aware. Okay. So, okay. Just gonna wait a few minutes. Give me a second. Hello. So just make sure you can hear me properly, right? Okay. Okay. So I wanted to start this off. This stream's gonna be about nightmares that I've had before, and this one, I've talked about my nightmares before with several other people. Um, and I always like to start off with this one. I like to call the daycare demon kid. And I had this nightmare when I was really, really young. And I believe it was like probably the first nightmare I've ever had. It was basically that, I was younger. Um, there was this old daycare being reopened. And it was like a really tall daycare. Like it, it was just really tall. And it seemed like they had a lot of floors, but it only was one floor. And it wasn't like a long floor either. It was like a short floor. Um, and they had decided to give a tour to everyone that was new to the place because apparently there was actually a big accident that happened, and then that was the reason why it was actually closed down in the first place. So, me and several other people with their parents. I didn't have my parents in the dream, and it was just me, a couple of parents, and their kids, and we were following, the tourist, and um, I remember that I felt like if I was to walk away from the group, then I would definitely get lost. And I needed some water, so I just turned around and drank from a fountain that was nearby. But when I turned around, they were gone. So I kind of looked around the place to see if I could find them again. I started opening doors. Some people, they were like technically already like having their little daycare setting, or it was like a little tea, like little rooms with a group of kids listening to stories, and there was like a bunch of rooms like that. Well, one very specific one, it was like a blue room, and they had a small window at the very corner, but it was at the bottom instead of um like um like a window on top. It was like in the corner, like kind of like a basement window that you would see from like outside. And this teacher was sitting on a wheelchair, on not a wheelchair, a rocking chair, telling the kids a story. And it was like a small group of kids. And I remember one very specific kid he had like a blue shirt and then like orangish kind of pants, and he had like light up Skechers, and he just kind of stood out to me. And he was actually a lot more vivid than the other characters in my dream. And I can even tell you that he even had freckles. I saw freckles on his face. And I closed the door, and that I didn't like that room. Well, I was walking away, and there was parents starting to stand outside of the rooms for so they can grab their kids, and they can leave for the day. Well, um, the little kid that I saw at first, he walks out. And the first thing I noticed when he walked out was that on the walls weren't blue anymore. I mean, they were blue, but there was splatters of red. And the first thing my little mind was blood. And the little kid goes to the mom, and she's like, "Mommy, my tooth hurts." And she's like, "Oh, okay, let me see your mouth." And again, I was really young when I had this dream or this nightmare, and he ripped off her face, like her entire face, just gone. And it was just muscle. Like all I saw was muscle. And I was completely freaking out. I didn't scream. Everyone else was running and screaming. But the little kid looked at me. Like he just stared at me. And I guess I was angry. And I decided to fight him. And I started fighting him. And that was the first time I've had that dream. Um, and I just kind of woke up after that. I was fighting, and then I woke up. Now, I think it was probably 3 or to 5 years later when I had the dream again. Except this time, um, when it first was introduced, it was talking about how it was closed the second time. And the second time, it was, that incident. It was talking about that in the news, like, okay, this place closed down because of this. And um, it was closed because of this. And they were going to reopen it again. And, they're telling that in the news. So uh, we had to get another tour. And I remember begging my mom not to let me go. And I still had to go. So I'm on this tour again. Everything happens again. I see the kid. But right before I had walked away from the room and I saw the parents of the little kid, I told them, I was like, don't, if he asks if he says that his tooth hurts, do not look into his mouth. He will bite it off. And, they looked at me crazy and they laughed. So I said, okay. So I walked away and I saw it happen again. But this time, when I was fighting him, he was talking to me. He was saying stuff like, he was saying, like, I had to do it. The mother and father were evil. And I was freaking out because he was saying it like we were siblings. But I've never seen this kid or his parents in my life. And he was just saying, like, join me. Weird. It's a dream. I'm a little kid when I had this. And it was really just freaky because it was scary. And after that, I just told him no, and I never had that dream again. Sometimes I do wonder what kind of dream or what led to that kind of dream. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for you. Um, Another one that I wanted to talk about, like a character that just continues to come back into my dreams, is this blonde girl. There's this blonde girl that I sometimes see in my dreams. I don't know if she's the same one every time because every time I see her, she's a little older. The first time I saw her, she was really young. And I had this nightmare, or a dream nightmare, also when I wasn't a kid like with the daycare one, but I certainly was not a teenager. So I was probably 10, 11, 12 maybe. And in the dream, I'm in these apartments and I'm living with my mother. And my mother is taking care of this kid. And she's been living there for more than 2, 3 years. And, one day I was playing outside with her and my mom was in the backyard. And, I asked her, I was like, when are we ever going to return the kid? This isn't your kid. And she just says, like, I need to tell you something. And I don't remember what she told me the first time. Like, it was just like, I don't believe you. You're just making stuff up. And, I asked the little kid, I was like, do you even know why you're still here? Why your parents haven't picked you up yet? And she said, it's like, oh, it's because my mom had died like 3 years ago. And I'm like, that's That's even worse than what my mom gave me. That's the worst answer. And I told her, I was like, I'm sure she's fine. So we're playing a lot more. We're still playing. And I see this black car with tinted windows just pull up. And um, we're outside. So outside of a gate. See, in the dream, I have never lived in these apartments. Not until I was older. And when I saw the apartments the first time, I was like, this was my dream. This setting was my dream. And um, so the way that it's placed is that the front is the inner part of the complex, and then the outside is the backyard. And right in the back of the apartment that I was living in, had like a little fence, but we were playing outside in the fence and the sidewalk. And um, the black car just came by, just kind of parked in front, and she looked at me and she just let me give you a little description of the little girl. Little, and she has like a messy blonde hair that was always tacked up in a ponytail. She wore like a princess kind of PJ shirt and neon pink shorts. And she just looked at me really sad, and she had these icy blue eyes, and she just like, I need to go with him. I'm like, who? I need to go into that car. And I'm like, you really don't have to. And she went to the car, and those dreams where you just can't really move. It felt like I was paralyzed. I was not like at all to move. And they took her, and they just drove off, and I had no idea what to do. So I go to my mom, and she's just like, whatever, that was probably the dad, and they took her. And I was freaking out, and I was upset with my mom. And then I black out, and I'm back in the setting with her. But this time, she's not playing as much. She's more of like, okay, we're doing this again. Like, she was aware that this was the second time we were doing this. And I was still confused. I was like, whoa, what happened? I thought they took you. Well, the car came back again. And I was trying to like convince her, like, do not say it. Just stay here with me. It'll be fine. She just shook her head, and she's like, I can't. I have to go. So the car took her. And the second time, I was actually crying. Fast forward a few more years. I was probably 14, 15 when I had this second dream. And in the dream, I was older, but the little girl was still little. I was talking to my mom, in the dream, I'm talking to her, and I asked her again, it's like, hey, when is her parents gonna come get her? And my mom goes, didn't we tell you before? It's like, no, what happened? The mom died 3 years ago. She died in a car accident because she was like high off of her mind, and she just killed herself in the car. Like, she just drove into a pole on purpose. And I was like, that's that's chilling. It's very scary. And it freaked me out. I was like, Jesus, that's not normal. And I go with the little kid. I make sure she's okay. And she's sitting outside again, playing, and I'm just like, I feel like something's going to happen. I didn't, I'm in the dream, so I don't know. I don't remember what was happening or what happened before. And I just like, I ask her, like, do you want to go inside? And she's like, I can't. We have to play outside. Like, why? We can go inside and play. And she just kept shaking her head. She's like, come on, let's just play out here. So I gave in. And again, I saw the black car. But this time she just looked at me. She's like, you know what we have to do. And I'm older, so this time I was able to hold her. I held her to me, and I was like, "You're not going inside the car." And she still got out of my hands, and she opened the door, and she kind of. But this time I got more detail to it. She sat in the back of the car, but there was another little girl in the back. And while I'm trying to get the first girl out, this man is walking towards me, and he has like a black beanie, black hoodie, or like a black jacket, sweater, black pants, black shoes. He has a beard and a mustache, and he's just like, "Hey, what are you doing in my car?" And I was just angry. I was so mad. So I started beating up the guy, and he's on the ground. And I'm like hitting him. And the first girl that was in the car, the little girl, she was telling me, she's like crying, like, "Don't hurt him, don't hurt him. He's just doing what I'm telling him to do." And I'm like, I stopped, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's just like, "I'm not supposed to say anything. We have to take her." And I'm so confused. This is like when I started realizing, like, this is a dream. What the freak is going on? Why is this happening? And so I look back at him, and I really would just wanted to end his life, but I didn't. And I let them go. He took the two girls, and he drove off. The second time came around, and I looked at her, and I was like, "We need to play inside now. This is not going to happen again." And she looked terrified. Like it was like I had told her to do something so risky. I was like, "We need to go play inside right now." And she was just like, "No, we're going to stay out here. We're going to wait for the car." And the car came by. And I was mad. I opened the door first, and I was like, "Listen, she's not getting in the car." And the guy, he came around. He's like, "We have to take her. If not, then I'm going to have to kill you and take her myself." So I ended up fighting the guy. And I I didn't. It's like in the middle of the fighting, he just looked at me, and it just went black, and all I could hear was, "She is not going to be happy about this one." And I'm just like, "What the heck? This is weird." And I black out, and I come back, and I'm still dreaming. And I wake up on the couch in the living room of this apartment. And I was like, "Mom, where's the little girl?" And she was like, "Are you serious? We've been over this like 4 times." I'm like, it's like everyone in the dream was aware what was happening, but they weren't allowing me to change it. And I was just like, "We need to figure out what's going on." And I don't remember a lot of between, but I was sitting in front of like 4 other people, and they were explaining to me on what was happening about her sister being kind of like a higher up, and that she needed her sister for more power. And he kind of like a scientist, I guess. He was showing me the different patterns of their brains. And it was like, if he showed me the man's brain first, and it was like really black. It wasn't black, it was purple. Like his brain itself was purple, and it had storm clouds around it, and just random lightning. And then it showed the little girl, and it was more of like a goldish, cloudy, like a heaven kind of thing. And he's like, the brighter the brain is, the more purity they have, and the more purity they have, the more they can be used to have power. And while that was, he was explaining, there was like this green, like a green gas that just kind of rose up, and then once it fell, they were gone, and I woke up. I haven't had a similar dream since. Um, and then honestly, after that, that's when a lot more crazier dreams started happening. Dreams started having more of like a plot and had more connections. Um, however, um, and that was like I said, it was just barely a few years ago. Um, I have like a lot of reoccurring settings and buildings, and I honestly would like to call it like my own little dream town. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this a couple times before as well. Um, hold on. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Strange. Okay. Well, moving forward about the um my dream town. Um, see, um, I don't want to say that my dream town has a town square, but it has a town square. And I don't have a lot of dreams when it comes to having the town square area. Um, see, even though it's like a lot of buildings that are reoccurring, they are kind of like spread it apart. Um, a lot more inner town parts are stuff that I rarely have dreams about, but more reoccurring ones are a lot further away from each other. For example, I have a, a gas station in the middle of a desert, and I have um, another kind of apartment complex that is kind of like a zombie slash ghost town. Not ghost town, like a ghost area. And then like around the apartment complex is also like a mall that's also always abandoned. There's a swap meet near there as well. Um, and then and this is like more like if I was gonna put in like a spectrum, it'd be more on this side, and more to like this area would have a mental hospital. There's a foster home, like for children, like orphanage. Um, Another area like around here would be like perfect housing. So it's like big houses and they have really pretty lawns, and then like the center is just like stores and stuff and more ghetto looking places. Um so with that being said, I had this one dream or nightmare really where I was in the nice apartments or the nice housings, and I was walking to a friend's house. But this friend, I've never met before in my life. I still have never met them. It was a guy. He had glasses and really long black hair, and he was like really thin. He was kind of a crackhead, and he he was very um, he gave a lot of mixed signals. Sometimes he would want to hang out, and then he just he'd say like, "I've never said that. I've never wanted to hang out with you." It's just back and forth stuff like that. And one day, I was like riding when I walked to his house, we were planning to make milkshakes, but in the middle of the making milkshakes, he kind of just told me to he told me to leave. He was like, "Get out of my house. I don't know why you're here." So I'm confused, but I leave. So I'm riding my bike, and it was weird because even though we lived right across from each other, I still had to ride the bike a long way. And I was riding the bike, and this group of guys kind of surrounded me, and they were kind of like they were just making me very uncomfortable with some of their what they're asking, what they're saying. But then suddenly it was like a loud ring. It wasn't like a bell. It was like an ear ring, like like when your earrings. It sounded like that, and it was just throughout the entire place, and it was silent. Like I, they stopped talking. The sounds were just so eerie, and it was just a long ring. And they just were like, "We need to go to the town square." They looked at each other, and then they just walked away. So I followed them. And we're in this big council place where, like, I saw everyone that I've ever had dreams with, and it was crazy because I could even see the demon kid in the back, the little blonde girl on the side, the guy with the with the car, the scientist, my mom, a bunch of other creatures and characters that I've had in my dreams before. Everyone was there, and they were talking, and I don't remember what they were talking about really, but it was something very concerning. And I remember looking outside of the window, like there was like the small little window on the top, and I looked, and there was like this family of ghosts, and they were just kind of crying, and one of them had looked at me, and I think it was like a little boy, and he was just like, "I was 13 when I died," and I was like, 13, like who killed you, or what happened? And the parent ghost kind of pushed him away, like, "Don't talk." And a police officer had came up behind me, and he was just like, "Hey, you're not supposed to be here." I'm just like, what are you talking about? This is a town meeting. I'm supposed to be here. I live here." And he's like, "No, you need to leave, like right now." And he takes me out. He takes me out of the building, and I go into the police car, and he's like, "What? Do you know where you live?" I'm like, "I live somewhere over there." And he took me not to the house, but to the apartment, the ghost apartments that I had far away. And I was like, "I don't live here." And he's like, "Oh, it shows here that you live here. This is where you live." I'm like, "No, this is not my home." And he just left. And I was by myself in this deserted ghost zombie place. And I woke up. It was very concerning. Um, it was honestly, lately, it's been feeling like my characters and the people in my dreams are kind of out of character. Like they break the third wall or the fourth wall. And um, another place from my nightmares is this. Like I've mentioned, there's a foster home near more that way, and this foster home is actually connected to another apartment. So it's not only just like a foster home; it's like a whole complex. itself, it's like, you know, complex and it's an apartment. And um, in this next nightmare, I I was new to the place. I was new to the foster care stuff because apparently I was on the run. And they take me in, and apparently they've known me for years. So they're like, yeah, you can just crash here. And I was rooming with this brunette girl, and she acted like I was some kind of celebrity, and she just kind of like followed me everywhere. This foster home was very old. It was very old looking, and on the second floor there was like a hole right in front of my room. So they had like one board that you had to very slowly, carefully walk, and it was one by one only. Well, one day there were these three new girls. One of them was more ghost-like. Another one, she was a lot more like, I don't know how to describe these girls, but one of them was more ghost-like. Another one was like red, and then another one had like the Doctor Plague kind of beak thing, and she wore completely all white. And she was basically like, "We're looking for someone," and they looked directly at me, like they were like, "Yeah, we know who you are." And um, they were kind of just chilling in the living room one day, and I was walking out of my room, and the girl that was following me everywhere was kind of annoying me, and I just like had this hugest like annoyance. And when I was crossing the hole, I kind of just pushed her. I pushed her, and she fell and broke her neck. And the three girls, were at the couch, and they just looked up like, "The heck was that?" And I was freaking out, like, "Holy shit! They're gonna call the cops on me. I need to dip." So I left, and I'm roaming around these apartments, and it was very eerie. Like it was pretty. Just the feeling itself was enough to give me the chills. And these apartments were always abandoned. Since whenever like this place had just appeared in my dream town, it has always been eerie. It's never had people to live there. And the first thing you'll ever notice is that the blinds are always broken, or the windows are boarded up, and there's always some kind of ghost story against these apartments. And I'm freaking out. So and it was like kind of like a rule that was like one of those rules that aren't said, but you should know, is never go into the apartment 37. Apartment 37 was literally the worst apartment to ever walk into. I went in because I was freaking out that I had killed someone. I walk in, and the place is completely empty. A normal sized apartment, well, at least once I walked in, I locked the door, and suddenly this place was like a big place, like a big mansion. I couldn't find myself around. And every like corner I turned, it was like a new one. And whenever I try to trace my steps back so I can go outside of the room or the apartment, I couldn't. But then I suddenly just I needed to run. Like I felt the hugest urge to just run. I felt like someone was actually inside of the apartment looking for me. So I ran and ran until I just kept running. And I've noticed that the color, the tile was getting a lot more darker in like, it was like carpet, and then it went to white tile, then gray tile, then green tile, then orange tile, then um kind of like a brighter red tile, then just all the way to like maroon, and then brown tile, and then black tile. And there were no more walls, and I was just running in this black emptiness, and I could suddenly hear it. I could suddenly hear the running footsteps after me, and it wasn't just two. There were four footsteps, and dear God, I did not want to turn around. I was afraid. And I could just it didn't sound human. It wasn't human. The way it was like it wasn't a cackle, but it wasn't laughing either. It was more of like a there was like a aha, but a lot of like aha, I caught you, but like a lot, and it was a lot more raspier and just it scared me, you know. And that's when I was like aware that I was in a dream, like I was in a nightmare, but I could not wake up. I kept trying to wake myself up, like this is a nightmare, just stop running. I couldn't, and I didn't say anything out loud because I'm panting and I'm running, but as I was running and I was trying to get rid of this feeling and trying to change it or go or wake up, he said this, even though it wasn't much that he could have said, it was just the timing of what he said and how it was it was like I felt like a mouse, and the cat had finally caught me, and he was just like, this is not a dream, this is not real, this is your mind, run. And that's when I woke up. When I tell you that I was terrified, no, it was, I don't even think the word terrifying could, it was pretty bad. It was really bad. And, I still think about what that thing had said. And it's scary. Um, it was, it was pretty traumatizing. Um, and I think that was probably the only nightmare that I've had where someone was chasing me, like officially chasing me. However, um, it was just looking back at it. It still it's been a few years since I've had that dream, but it's very fresh in my mind sometimes. But um, another one that is kind of fresh in my mind isn't really traumatizing, but it is pretty interesting. See, I am a huge creepypasta fan. Love creepypasta. However, I've had very few amounts of dreams where I've had creepypasta. Um, Even though like I would go to bed listening to them and stuff. Um, Give me a second. Okay. Sorry, I touched something. um, so, speaking of creepypasta, I somewhere in the back of my, my little town, further away, is another mental hospital. Um, and this mental hospital is kind of connected with a hotel, and this hospital I've sometimes came in willingly, and then some other times in dreams I would have to force myself out. However, this one was one of those times where I had just walked in and they were like, yeah, go do whatever. Well, I had bumped into Slenderman in the dream. I was like, okay, yeah, I wasn't scared. It was just like, okay, this is a character. I know the stories, whatever. It's a dream. I'm cool with it. And he's like, hey, do you want to see something cool? I said, heck yeah, I want to see something cool. And he takes me to this hallway that I've never been before. And in it has like, it's like the walls, or the hall of bunch of doors, like a hospital or a hotel has. But right before you turn the corner, there is like this little part that's has the wall pushed in, and you can only see it if you do not if you don't make that if you don't turn that corner. If you don't turn that corner, you're able to see it, but as soon as you turn the corner, it's out of sight. So, you know he takes me to the little part that is kind of pushed into the wall, and it's this very thin red door, and it was like chipped, like red chipped wooden door, and it had 3 steps. So he holds the doorknob and he looks at me. He says, "I need you to know, do not, I repeat, do not sit with anyone other than me." And I said, well, "Why?" He's like, "Just don't do it." So he opened the door. We walk in. And the first thing I notice is that this is a theater. And the theater is filled with chairs of people that were dressed up in they looked like they were from the 80s. And, you know, they're all like minding their own business. They're all old people. And we're passing through an aisle. And one of the women, she's like, "Oh my God, you're so pretty. Come sit with me. My husband's almost we're about to get ready for the show. My husband's gonna come with drinks. You can come, sit with us." I was like, "No, thank you. I'm good." And another woman's like, "Oh my God, you should come sit with me and my brother. We're about to have like candy and stuff. Come sit with us." And the more and more that people had offered me to sit down, it was a lot more persuasive. And at one point, I ended up sitting with a couple, and they just kind of looked at me, and the other people around them just stared at me. And Slenderman was out of sight. I didn't see him. And they look at me, and I'm like, "What are you guys looking at?" And they just started tearing at my skin. Like it was, they just ripped my skin as if it was just like nothing. Like I was wrapping paper. And they just started eating my insides. And it felt painful. I was in pain, like it was actually happening. I woke up. After that, it was so much pain that I had woken up, and I actually went to the bathroom and threw up because of my stomach hurting. and I was, yeah, it was nuts. Sorry, I have an empty bottle on my desk, and it kind of okay. So, um, so a few maybe months to weeks later after that dream, I I had the dream again, and Slenderman was there, and he was like, "What did I tell you?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Never mind. Let's go watch the movie. Let's go watch it in the theater." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Let's go." So we go to the theater again, and he reminds me, "Do not sit with anyone, please." I was like, "Okay." So I'm walking with him again, and we sit in the very front. And the first thing I noticed was that everyone that was sitting in the chairs had really beautiful red seats. Like they were all just really pretty, and it matched the whole theme of the theater. But the chairs that we were sitting on were like the metal ones, so those metal foldables. And I was just like, why can't we sit on one of those? And he was just like, don't ask questions. That's the least I ask you. Do not ask questions. So I was like, fine, whatever. Then he did the mistake of saying, I'll be right back. And he exited out of a door that was right next to us. And I was like, why did you leave me here? And the old people behind me started like, hey, you come sit with us, come sit. And it was enough for me to freak out, and I walked out of the same door that he did. And I was in like a schoolyard, and it was abandoned. It was another like a lot of the places in my dreams are abandoned, or were abandoned at one point. It, I don't remember a lot after opening the door and I saw that, and it just kind of went to like normal for a little bit until I had went into the teacher's lounge, and I just heard screaming like crazy. I'm about to kill someone screaming. So I left. I left that, and I woke up, and man, um, it's crazy. That's the least I can say. Speaking of, you know, body parts, I also wanted to talk about sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis. We all know what sleep paralysis is. You just can't move, can't talk, can't scream, and that happens scientifically when you're not fully awake and you're just kind of in the middle, and it can cause you to hallucinate and stuff. Well, I've had sleep paralysis 3 to 4 times. The first time was very terrifying. I didn't know what sleep paralysis was that time. And the first time I had it, I was probably 12 or 13. And when I was 12 or 13, I was watching My Little Pony. And I had a dream that I was getting married. And I don't know about you guys, but like in middle school, I had a theater class, and the theater class had it was called the Black Box, and it was basically just a room with like the walls are black, the ceiling was black, the tiles were black, and it was just a black box where everyone would practice and stuff. Well, in the dream, I was in a black box, and on the right side of the room, it had like cutouts, like you can see like town cutouts on the side. Like I was behind basically all the props, and I was getting married, and I was hyperventilating, I had two human bridesmaids, and I had Fluttershy as my third. I'm hyperventilating, and the first two were like, "Hey, it's okay. Just look at Fluttershy, and everything will be melting, like just off of her bone." And I was terrified, but I I woke up, but I couldn't breathe out, and I was still hyperventilating. And from the corner, like I was laying on my side, and I was facing my bed was kind of, it wasn't against a wall, so I had on both sides there was space to walk through. But in the corner, in the side, in my vision, I could see a dark, like ball, like this big, just kind of rush to my bedside, and it just was gone for a few seconds, and then it just slowly risen up, and I was so afraid. I had closed my eyes, and I could still see Fluttershy's face, and I could, again, I was asleep, so I was, paralyzed. I was paralyzed, so I couldn't scream or anything. Um, can you guys still hear me? I just asked because my connection isn't very well. Hello? Can you guys hear me? Okay. Yeah, it's just the connection just keeps. But anyhow, that that was my first paralyzed paralysis. The second one, I don't remember the dream, but I remember I had woken up to like a woman coughing, not coughing, but like clearing her throat, and I couldn't move, but I could just slightly open my eyes, and I saw, like, barely saw a woman in a long coat and a red scarf, and she was just pointing towards my sister's room, and she was just looking at me, but her arm was extended, and she was just like, and I was, my heart was racing, and I was just like, oh my god, what the heck. Um, the third one, I I gonna put this out here now. I hate, I hate with a passion dolls. I hate dolls so much. Like, I can deal with it during the day. Like, okay, doll, that's a doll, cool. But if the lights are off, dang well I'm not gonna be alone with a doll. No, no, thank you. Especially if that thing looks realistic. Heck no. You can't even pay me to go. I hate dolls. And this one time I had a dream or nightmare that I had woken up in my old house, and I was surrounded by dolls. It was, a bunch of random dolls, like porcelain dolls, raggedy dolls, Barbie dolls, those like American Girl dolls, like just dolls all around me. And at first I was like, okay, this is a little weird. But it started getting a lot more creepier when their eyes just kind of like, if you ever seen like when Chucky, like when he's slowly transforming into like his normal face, his eyes kind of like his sockets just kind of deepen. That's what it looked like. A lot of them did that, and I started freaking out, and I could not scream. And once their lips just started slowly rising up, I woke up again, but this time I was in another location, and I sat up, I saw the dolls, and the process happened again. I could not scream. It happened again, and this happened 4 times. But when I finally woke up the last time, I sat up, but I refused to open my eyes. I was afraid that it was going to happen again. I woke up, and I had sat up, and I had closed my eyes, and I could not open them any further than just a little bit again. And I was sitting up, but I could not lay back down. Like, I was frozen sitting up, and it was like a pain had shot up through my back, and I could just hear like little giggles, and I could barely see like the porcelain doll in front of me, and I was terrified. I I was scared. It's freaking scary. Dolls are creepy, and mm-mm. After that, I was able to lay back down, and I finally opened my eyes. Still panicking, I kicked my feet, make sure the doll wasn't really there. It was terrifying. Um, Last time I had sleep paralysis, though, for a while, I had finally um, I was able to control my dreams and my nightmares, and this happened in 3 years. And um, I was like falling asleep, and I was facing towards my closet. I was living in this place, and I was facing towards my closet, and I could just kind of see like long fingernails kind of hold the edge of the door. But right before I can go into full like paralysis, I was able to shift around. Like I could like feel the pressure just slowly, sluggishly getting on me. But I was able to just turn, and I just kind of cussed at the thing. I was like, heck no, I have school tomorrow. Piss off. And that was the last time I ever had sleep paralysis. Um, but sure as hell was not the last time I had nightmares. At one point, my nightmares just kind of weren't scary anymore, and they they didn't bother me. I would like to say that my brain had tried really hard to just kind of scare me, but I think it tried so hard